Well, good evening. Welcome back to The Last Tackle, your one-stop shop for everything rugby league here on The Sportsman. Delighted to have two guests with me in the studio, Andrew Henderson and making his Last Tackle debut, John Kear. Gents, great to have you both with us. It's a very exciting time of year, isn't it, Hendo, when you kind of get to August and you're into games on one hand now and starting to think about playoffs, and every win seems more significant than the next. We're looking at the kind of season now in a microcosm of 6 weeks.
Yeah, no, look, it's coming towards the business end, and it's when people do start getting excited. Is your team going to make the playoffs? You know, and if so, are they going to achieve silverware? We have announcements of new signings coming out for clubs for 2026 as well. That starts to create a lot of interest and excitement about how teams are going to shape up the following year. We've also had the news announced that Super League is going to expand to 14 teams. So now that's created a lot of talking points and excitement for certain clubs. There is going to be disappointment for some clubs as well. But yeah, there's a lot of things to look forward to towards the back end of the season, and like you said, it's been a fantastic year so far.
And John, we obviously go through this time of year every year building up to playoffs, but it just has this way of reinventing itself every time, doesn't it? Throwing up different narratives and storylines.
It is. There's a story every year, isn't there? And we've got a great story this year with the Hull Kingston Rovers, leading the way throughout the season. The Wigan wobbles come, but they always finish really well. St Helens are sort of pinning their ears back and really finishing very well indeed. And we've got shootouts for playoff spots. So it really is. It's a fascinating end, and it will be at the end of a great season. And hopefully we may well see a new winner at the Super League Grand Final.
Yeah, it's certainly difficult to back against Hull KR at the moment, isn't it? The way they're going. We'll touch on Hull KR shortly. Just some big news to reflect on before we look back at the games of the weekend. After months of speculation, John, some certainty for Leeds in terms of next season. Brad Arthur will be the head coach. It seems like a good news story for Leeds. They've done great things under Brad, but I think it's good for the league as well.
It is. It's great for the game. But he's been, in my opinion, he's been the signing of the season. It really has. Because he's taken Leeds from a team that were passive in defence and they allowed things to happen to them but played some great rugby. He's taken that out of them and he's put his own DNA in there, and they're really tough defensively. I mean, they're the second best, I think the second or third best defensive team in the league behind Hull KR and I think St Helens, but they take some scoring against, and Brad Arthur's given them that steel, and he's also got the X factor in your Jake Connor as well, which really do make them an entertaining team to watch as well.
I don't know if this is just a kind of false perception that I've had from watching Leeds this year, John, but I felt like there's almost been a weight on the shoulders of Leeds players in the last few years.
Yeah.
Obviously a massive club that hasn't quite had the success in the last 5 years you'd expect, and it felt like that got a little bit heavier each year. I feel Brad Arthur's kind of lessened that load a little bit somehow.
I think he's lessened the load by shouldering it himself. It really has. And I think the other thing that when you speak to the Leeds players, they're so clear in what their role is. And when you've got clarity, you can execute it to a really high standard. And I think that's exactly what's happened. So is that a massive effect? Is that a massive effect as well on the coaching staff? People like Scott Griggs and Jamie Langley who've come in there. So the club at the minute, the Leeds Rhinos, is very much a club on the up, and it's a club that's got a great sense of belief and confidence that's growing at the right time of the season.
And you've obviously seen it all the way from player, coach, and now into your head of rugby role. How important is consistency and certainty in terms of those coaching roles and knowing what's going to be there in 12 months' time?
Yeah, well, I think the key is stability. I think having that stable sort of person at the top, and obviously Brad Arthur, as we know, he's had a huge influence on that Leeds side. There's been a lot of is he staying, is he going type thing, which is a little bit unsettling. But the fact now they have nailed him to the mast and he is sticking around, like you said, gives confidence to that playing group because they've obviously bought into his playing style and his coaching philosophy. He's clearly getting the best out of certain players there. But you're right, it's really, really important that you have stability in terms of your coaching department and your performance department. Again, stability in your playing group too. You can't be chopping and changing all the time. You need to have a core of that group of players that are going to be there for 3 or 4 years, and you just keep building the pieces around them to improve your team in those areas that you need to. Cohesion, consistency, two real important factors there for any team.
Staying on the theme of coaching, but moving on to a club very close to your heart, Hendo, Castleford Tigers, now there's every chance in the 2 hours between recording this and going out that they may have announced who their new head coach is. Chris Chester has hinted that they're very close to a decision. I think it was final interviews this week. Feels like one of the most significant decisions in Castleford's recent history, this one.
Yeah, it certainly is, and we've just been touching on there about stability, and that's probably an area that Castleford haven't had in the last few years. They've had, there's obviously been talks around some financial issues, not had that strong financial stability there, but also from their coaching point of view, they've not had any stability with the coaching side of things. They've chopped and changed, I think, 4 or 5 coaches in the last sort of 5 years. That's a huge amount of turnover. Then you probably factor in some of the assistant coaches as well, S&C staff, physios. There's been a lot of turnover of staff in that performance department, and you can argue as well with the playing roster. So, yeah, look, they need to get this appointment right. I think Chris has alluded, in previous interviews, the style of coach or the type of coach he has identified or is looking at, and I'm just hoping that he gets the right man for the job there. That's going to help give Castleford some stability and opportunity to grow and progress.
I think, Lewis, this is the biggest decision that Castleford have had to make since 2013 when Darryl Powell got the job. And they need somebody to have the impact that Darryl Powell had. Darryl took them from a club that was floundering, really, to all of a sudden they were reaching Challenge Cup finals, they were in League Leaders Shields, they got to the Super League Grand Final, and they need somebody else to have that impression. And I'm absolutely with Endo there. They've just changed coaches. It's been like a change of direction every 6-12 months. You just can't do that if you want to have long-term progression. So it's a massive, massive decision, and for me, I'll tell you who I'd go for Paul Rowley. Now, I know he's at Salford, but he's an outstanding coach, and I think he's shown this year what an outstanding man manager as well. And if I was Chris Chester, and my mate Chris Chester, but if I was Chris Chester, he'd been the one on the speed dial, but I don't know whether he's going to get it. It may well be an overseas coach that gets it.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? We talk about the kind of weight that comes with the Leeds job. It's a different kind of way because it's not so much built on success, but that classy Cass sort of moniker, that you do have to have a certain profile, I think, to go in and be a success at a club like Cass.
Absolutely correct. I mean, it's been known since the 60s, the Hardesty Epworth era, that they played some great rugby league football, and that was further cemented in Darryl's era, and I think it needs very much an attack-minded coach, and Paul Rowley is absolutely that, because his philosophy, if you can pass the ball in their 20, well, why not pass it in your own 20 as well? And it just leads for great entertainment, and I think the Cass public would really take to him should he get the job. But Chris is keeping things very much close to his chest.
Yeah, we'll wait and see. Let's just reflect on round 21 from the Betfred Super League, starting off with that big result for Leeds. Hendo, proof, if we needed it, I think they're going to have a big stay in what happens with the rest of this season.
Yeah, look, I think they're a chance come playoff time, a genuine chance. But don't discount Lee either. They're sitting third in the league for a reason. I think they've gone under the radar for the majority of this season. I think a lot of focus has been on Hull Kingston Rovers, Wigan, the re-emergence of Leeds, even talk about Hull and Wakefield, how much they've improved their season. Nobody's really talking about the Lee Leopards, and albeit they've come off the back of a disappointing loss there to the Rhinos, don't discount them either. But from Leeds' perspective, I thought that was a really important fixture for them. They obviously beat them a few weeks back at Henley. It was a high-scoring affair. This obviously was a lot more of a narrower contest. But to go to Lee, which is a tough place to go, it's a cauldron of intensity. They went there and they delivered a strong performance. I thought Sam Lasoni changed the game from when he came off the bench. He came on straight away, first carry, got a penalty, he scored a try just before half-time, and I think he played a big part in them sort of changing the momentum of that game. I do feel Lee will rue some of the errors that they made at crucial points, and some of their discipline at times probably cost them in the end. But it was a great game of rugby league, but Leeds just showed their class in the end.
And I think, Endo, we've got to put it in perspective as well, because it was great for Leeds with their performance, but Lee had come off the back of 3 really tough games. So that may well have been a factor as well into them just being that slightly off par. But Leeds absolutely nailed it, and I'm with you totally. The Leeds Sports Village, when it's rocking and when it's packed, it's a hard place to play as an opposition team, but the Leeds nailed it. But I think Lee as well, there might well have been reasons why they were just that touch off it.
I think as well, from a Lee perspective, it almost felt like a bit of a sparring session for what might be down the line. And we don't know how this top 6 is going to settle when we get to the playoffs, but there's a chance that they could meet each other in a knockout game, could even meet each other in a grand final. I think probably Adrian Lamb will take that game apart and look at it and go, well, when we're doing this and it means a bit more in 6 weeks' time, at least we've got a little bit of
very much so.
memory.
I mean, Lam is a really clever coach, and he will analyse it to the nth degree, and they will make decisions better than perhaps they did that day. And also one or two of the players, young Bailey Hodge has been brilliant, but he had an off day that day.
Yeah.
So there are reasons behind that, and I'm sure that come playoff time, everybody will have the sleeves rolled up and everybody will be ready to rock and roll to the nth degree.
Moving on to Friday, familiar story for Warrington this season. In the fight for a lot of that game, faded away. I think when we get to September, and we're looking back, we'll probably be able to count quite a few of those games. If Warrington had stayed the distance, Hendo, they would be in that top six.
Yeah, look, it was a big game for Warrington Friday night. For me, they had to win that to have any chance of keeping their top six hopes alive. I thought there was plenty of effort and endeavour from the Wolves, but I do think they'll rue some missed opportunities out there. I think a couple of tries went begging just through that execution of skill. I remember the forward pass to Philbin. There was another one that went just behind Jake Thulis as well. There was a couple of pieces of play there that, like you said, if they'd executed a little bit more clinically, they probably would have got those points and got across the line. But you've got to credit Wigan. They weren't at their best either. They probably missed a few opportunities as well out there and left a few tries out there. But geez, they scored some outstanding tries. That one where Zach Eckersley puts that kick back on the inside, like that was an outstanding try there.
He's been tremendous, hasn't he?
He has for a young bloke. Yeah. And I just felt like it was a really good game of rugby league. Plenty of effort and endeavour from both times. I think some of the execution of skill from both sides let them down, but ultimately probably there was too many missed opportunities.
But Lewis, in the Warrington games, when Warrington played Saints and Wigan, they've played really well. I think they've let themselves down when they've played against teams lower down than them. Whether they've approached it with less intensity, I don't know. But they've let themselves down then, and that will ultimately count against them in their quest for the top six. I think it's gone for them, in all honesty. I think that game was the game that they had to win, and I think it's gone for them.
Well, I think they need snookers now, don't they? Just from a Wigan perspective, you mentioned that kind of Wigan wobble that we've almost become accustomed to in sort of late July, early August. They're such a strange beast, because if it was a boxing match, it's like rounds 9, 10, 11, when all of a sudden they're a just completely different monster. I'm not saying we're there yet. Friday's a big night, but you just felt Jay Field comes back, Bevan French probably back this week. All of a sudden, it's just like, I don't want to play Wigan anymore.
It's like last season. They had a period when Field and French missed last season, and that was when the wobble occurred. But they still, they jagged a few victories and stayed in there. Then when they got everybody back, it was as if, right, we've just timed this exactly right, and we'll just win it all the competitions.
They've got a knack of doing that,
They certainly have,
yes. They'll be dangerous. You absolutely cannot write them off. I also don't think you can write St Helens off. And if we were having this conversation in May, Hendo, about is Paul Wellens under pressure? Do St Helens need a change? Well, all of a sudden it's the flip of that. And what he's done, people will talk about the job that Hull KR and Willie Peters has done and coaches like that. Well, Paul Wellens this year has been pretty hot.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember that time when we spoke about it. I backed Paul Wellens. I thought he was being unfairly treated. They had 5 wins from 10. They were still sitting 6th in the league. He was missing a foray of players. Some of the big names. Wormsley was missing. Wellesby, obviously. Lomax was a bit in and out. I know there was still an element of him tweaking his side, but they were missing a number of key players at that time. And there was still, for me, 16 games to go, 32 points up for grabs. And I knew that if they can get on a bit of a run, they can turn this around. And that's exactly what they've done. I mean, like you said, there was a bit of pressure coming his way at the start of the year, but I'm glad the club held their nerve. They've backed their coach, and he's managed to turn things around. And I think John alluded to it before. I think they're the second best defensive team in the competition. They're right up there in terms of in the top 3 or 4 teams attack wise, and they are going to be a genuine threat come the playoffs as well. I'm really pleased for St Helens.
They've rediscovered how they want to play. They really have. They've always based things on ending sets well and ferocious yardage defence. They really have. It's really difficult to get field position against St Helens, but I think by moving them into the halves, I think they've discovered the secret formula, because his kicking game has been sensational. It's very, very accurate, it's very consistent, and it allows St Helens to have that ferocious line chase and early tackles that they have inevitably in yardage defence that's strangling teams. So they really are one to watch out for.
I want to talk about the best defensive side in the competition, and specifically that point. 21 games in, Hull KR still averaging less than 10 points conceded
incredible.
a game. I mean, it's a ridiculous record. I just wonder, this feels like a Hull KR team that have been on a journey, and I just wonder, you look at some of those individual moments over the years, you know, the first time they got into the playoffs, they were beaten pretty heavily. Lost that Challenge Cup final in pretty devastating circumstances. Lost that grand final last year. It just feels like a team now that's taken enough punches, that's got a kind of toughened mentality about them. And I know there'll be a huge amount of process and coaching and talent that's gone into this defensive record, but I think the mentality is probably the difference.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I call it experience. I think probably for a lot of those Hull Kingston Rovers players, they didn't have the luxury of having a lot of big game experience. And they've sort of gained that over the last couple of years, you know, appearing in Challenge Cup finals, grand finals, albeit on the wrong side of the scoreline, you know what I mean? But they've gained that big game experience. The fact that they're playing consistently well as well in their league competition, and they have done that again over the last couple of years, and we've seen that progression, haven't we? You know, top 4, top 2, you know, now sitting top of the league, couple of major finals lost, and then they played a major final this year and won it. The progression that they've made under Willie Peters in this era has been sensational. I think they've got their recruitment right. I think they've got a really good balance within their side of experience and youth, and there's a genuine belief there, and I think winning that Challenge Cup final was a big one, because that day they weren't at their best.
No.
Let's not kid ourselves. But they found a way to nick it. They found a way to win it. You know, and I think since that point, there was a lot of question marks on how they're going to respond after that, winning that cup final. Will they rest on their laurels? We've got the trophy now, job done. But mate, they've just gone another level. They've just kept going through the gears since that Wembley win. And again, I still think they've got more in them to come for the playoffs. So it's
nobody
exciting.
remembers how you play in a Challenge Cup final, do they? They remember who wins it.
Correct.
And Hull Kingston did that. And I agree with you totally, Lewis. It's about the mentality, because you can talk about structures in defence, etc. But what I love the best, you ain't scored against Hull KR until the ball's actually grounded, because they absolutely scramble. They lose all structure, but it becomes a willingness just to prevent the opposition from scoring, whatever it takes. And you find people popping up out of position and coming up with a marvellous try-saving tackle, or somebody will just knock the ball dead from a kick, and they just find a way to diffuse that situation. And that mentality is absolutely tremendous. And obviously, attacking-wise, they aren't bad either, are they? Especially with when Mikey Lewis is functioning.
They're scoring about 33 points a game, aren't they?
We'll see what happens around the end of the season. There's a very good chance that we look back at this being a very special team.
My only worry about Hull Kingston Rovers is that they've dominated so much for so long. You know, we talk about a Wigan wobble. We talk about Saints not starting so well and coming good. Are they going to have a wobble at some stage? It might be Friday.
It's got a little bit of, and I'm not saying this will happen, and I know there were some different circumstances in 2017, but when you look at Cass in 2017, all conquering, and then at the really important time, I don't think that'll happen with Hull KR, but it can clearly happen, can't it? We'll just quickly move on. I just want a quick word on Huddersfield. Obviously, just playing for Pride at this point in the season, but really improving, Endo, I think we can agree. And it is that time of year where if you're not looking at playoffs, you might as well be looking to set the foundation for next season. I think they're doing that.
Yeah, they are. They've come off the back of back-to-back wins now, which has been impressive for them, and they'll be hunting down Catland now to try and overtake them in the table. And I just think, looking at them on the weekend, I thought, it was a fairly even contest if you're looking at the stats. A fair share of possession, ball control was pretty decent, discipline on the whole was fairly decent. But ultimately, for me, it was the combination of Flanagan and Rush, the two young halves, coming together now. Rushy setting up a couple of tries, George scoring a couple himself. But I just like that combination. It's starting to prove to be quite fruitful. It's developing. And I think that's probably what Coach Robinson's looking at now, as you rightly said. The fact that now we're looking to next season, trying to build these combinations and trying to get a little bit of pride, but a little bit of sort of continuity and confidence at the back end to hopefully build on going into next season.
You asked me off air, John, who I thought the breakout star this season was, and I went to a couple of those kind of young guns coming through at Saints. You straight away, George Flanagan Jr. And now you've said it, it's very difficult to argue with. I watched a lot of him in League One last year. He's brilliant.
But Lewis, he's come through. He hasn't come through as a centre, which Robertson's come through, as a winger diagonal. He's come through in a pivotal position, which is so difficult to do. And, you know, as you rightly say, 12 months ago, he's playing for Hunslet in a League One playoff final. Now, is I would say, central to absolutely Huddersfield's future plans. And I know Niall Levels are signed for another 2 years, but it'd be hard to argue against George Flanagan being the starting full-back. And also, so that's a compliment to Luke Robinson. But also, Luke Robinson, how brave was he to put Burgess as 18th man and bring in Ollie Wilson to start? I thought that was a real courageous coaching decision by one so young who's had a tough season, but it just shows how he's maturing and how he's developing as a coach.
I think what the Flanagan thing does for me as well, and this is broad brushstrokes, but at a time when we're talking about the structure of the game and the pyramid and how many teams should be where, well, here's a player that was playing in League One last year who's gone, it works.
Yeah.
That development pyramid works, and it's one of the strength points, and I think we need to be careful to not lose that as well.
Exactly right. And building they will come, and I'll take it to Wakefield's three-quarter line against St Helens. It was Lachlan Walmsley, it was Corey Hall, it was Ollie Pratt, and it was Jaden Myers. Now, all those were featuring in the Championship not so long ago. But it just shows, give the players opportunity. Players are smart, and players will work hard if they get that opportunity. Give them the opportunity, they'll improve, they'll develop, and I think we've got enough for 14 teams in Super League.
We'll touch on this very quickly soon. I just want to pick up on one more point for the weekend. Almost feels like it's a weekly feature at this point, and I'm sick of doing it. But Salford, it's just. By the way, before we talk about Salford, full credit to Hull FC, the way that they conducted themselves on the field during the game, the scenes afterwards, the way that their fans were throughout that game, I thought was a credit to them as a club and the game. But it's just another very, very sad moment in this circus.
It's a debacle. There's no doubt about that. You know, you've just got to look at it and think, this should not be happening in elite sport. It's like a Premier League team getting beaten 10-0 every week. You know, and it doesn't. It's not a good look for us as a sport. And there are people who've got to take responsibility, and they are the owners. And I think you've got to really have a sense of empathy with the players who feature so valiantly throughout this, and these young men who are coming in now and being thrown into the lions, the coaching staff who I think have been dignified and respectful throughout, and the fans who have followed them throughout this so difficult season. But some questions need asking, and we, as rugby league lovers, need some answers.
Well, there's been a statement this week from the owners, the first time we've heard them from them for a while. They've reinforced their commitment to the club. They've said the club will still be there next year. They've said this bridging loan is on the way at the end of the month, and that the financial security has been secured. And we do this show every Wednesday, so we'll see you next week. We'll see how we get on. Would be remiss of me to not talk about the Championship with the Batley Bulldogs head coach and the head of rugby at York in there. It feels like the kind of best kept secret in most sports, most years. But Hendo, I've come to you as the man involved with the club that sat at the top of it. Now that we've got this announcement of the Super League expansion, I know there's a lot of different opinions on it, but it just feels like the temperature's turned up again in the Championship. And I know it's not going to be out and out on the field performance that decides it, but you must feel from your perspective, win the Championship, you've got a better chance of being in the Super League.
Of course. Well, ultimately, winning the Championship, you know, and the fact that we've won the 1895 Cup as well gets us a little bit of points towards the IMG score. Winning the Championship gives us the highest performance score we can achieve out, you know, as it stands, so towards our IMG score. And obviously we're very hopeful that a lot of the things that we've been doing off the field as well is going to increase our score, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll be in there, you know, by being part of the top 12, as opposed to having to go to this other panel and state our case as into why we should be in Super League. But look, I think as a club we've got a lot to offer. You know, in terms of we're based in North Yorkshire, we've got a different catchment there to tap into. I think we've got a fantastic facility to showcase Super League Rugby League. You know, we've got fantastic people working behind the scenes. Financially, we're stable. Like you said, the squad is growing. We've got a wonderful coaching team there, led by Mark Applegarth, who are doing a tremendous job. Yeah, I just think we've got a fan base too that's growing, albeit that might be one of the things that gets questioned, have we got enough fans? But we've got a real core base there at the moment that is growing. We're seeing growth every year. year. And I think that's one of the things that people will be looking at. Is your organisation, is your club growing? And I feel we are. But again, we'll wait and see what happens. But we have got to go with the mindset of our ambition is to be a Super League club. We are building and have been building over the last few years to be that. And we have to continue on that trajectory. And if we're in, fantastic. And if we're not, it doesn't deter from our plans. We'll just keep building until the day we get there.
But I think on-field performance should be given a far greater weighting. I really do. You know, worrying about whether the gantry's this size or there's so many facilities off-field.
Well, for me,
you know, it's vital, is that on-field performance.
For me, it should be the only weighting. But
yes. Thank you.
We are.
Yes.
I'm going to move us on because we can talk about this for an hour in itself. Let's just have a look at the menu then for round 22 in the Betfred Super League. Start of 10 on Thursday night. This is interesting because it's probably a dead rubber, Warrington Catalans. But my word, John, it's two teams desperate for a win.
It is two teams desperate for a win, but I think it will mean more to Warrington because of where the venue is, and I think they'll nail it because they've shown in the last couple of performances improvements. But this is a team as well, and we spoke before that they've perhaps underperformed against teams that you expect them to beat. Well, this is one where Sam's got to get his troops really zoned in and ready to rock and roll so that they put Catalans to the cleaners. So I think it will be a good Warrington win and a comfortable Warrington win.
Yeah.
Quick prediction then, though?
Yeah, I'm back in Warrington too. I think George Williams is playing tremendous.
Yeah.
I think Dufty will probably come back into the frame this week, and he was a miss obviously on the weekend. He certainly adds a lot more, and Danny Walker with his dummy half threat as well. I just don't feel Catalans are offering enough at the moment as a team. They're not scoring enough points. No. They're conceding too many, and I don't feel they've got that desire or hunger that the Wolves will have on Thursday.
Well, we'll move on to Friday and the blockbuster and the most eagerly anticipated game of the season. And quite frankly, you could put this on pay-per-view. I think it was set out. Wigan Warriors against Hull KR. Wigan have to win to stay in touch. Hull KR, if they win this, they've probably got the ribbons on the League Leaders Shield. John, what a game this is.
Massive.
Such a good game.
I think from round 10, 11 or 12 when we've seen Hull KR and Wigan just pull away, I think everybody's had this circled on the calendar and they said this is going to be the decider. And I know Willie Peters and Matty Peet, they'll play it down, but it is. I think whoever wins this will come away with the league leaders title. And if it's Wigan, I think they'll kick on and build great momentum. And if it's Hull KR, I just think the gap's too big. So I think it's an absolutely vital game, and I'm so looking forward to it. And I hope that French is back so that we see the very best players against each other, and then let the players decide.
I think last season, Endo, was all about how good Wigan were, and I think the narrative then Wigan were for. This year we've got two out and outs, a proper top two, and on Friday night it feels like almost a dress rehearsal for a grand final. I don't want to write off.
No, no, you're right. Look, I get it, Lewis. Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you. Look, both teams can score points. Both teams have got some, like John's alluded to there, some wonderful strike players and some talented players. You look at Hull Kingston Rovers, Mikey Lewis. He can be a game changer. In terms of his try assist, the tries he scores, the opportunities he creates for his teammate. I think Joe Burgess is playing sensationally well at the moment. He can break the line. He's scoring plenty of tries. Him and Tom Davis between them get their teams on the front foot. You look at Wigan though, Field back in the frame. Will French come back in? If he does, them two are game breakers. Liam Marshall is so important too with his backfield carries and try scoring ability, as well as Harry Smith, the England halfback. His kicking game, if he's on point, mate, causes any team's problem. So, like we said, there's so many players on show to showcase this Friday. Who takes it? I don't know, but Wigan, like I said, they've got the edge, haven't they? They beat them.
I was going to put you both on the spot. One word answers. Go on. One word who wins.
Come on, Endo. Come on.
I'm back in Wigan on Friday.
Well, I'm going to go with the Mickey McIlroy and Jared Ferreira-Hargreaves effect. I think they've affected the mentality of Hull Kingston Rovers. I'm going to go with Rovers.
Split decision in the studio. It's going to be outstanding viewing, isn't it? Whether you're in the stadium, I think a lot of people are going to be, by the sounds of it, or in front of TV. It's going to be outstanding. Castleford Leeds hand over quickly. Leeds will be in very positive mood after that win of the weekend. The Brad Arthur news. It doesn't feel like that stops against Cass.
No, I don't think so. I think Leeds will continue to perform. Like I said, I think at the moment Cass have coming off the back of back-to-back losses. I don't see them really having enough to trouble Leeds. Even though it's at home, it's a local derby. certainly they'll raise, but I'm backing Leeds.
Endo, you know what it means though to cash plays.
I do know,
You
but I just don't think they're going to have enough on the night.
I think you're going to have an
an
extra foot when you play against Leeds as a cash player. But again, I think Leeds, with the positivity coming out, I just think they'll nick it. But I think it'll be a lot closer than what people are thinking.
Big night for Lee against Hull FC after that defeat to Leeds. Hull FC obviously much sterner test this time around than last time out, but Lee, I think you can get away with losing one in a row. 2 in a row, some people. I
would agree with you, Tom, and it is a big game because earlier in the season they played each other and it was a draw. It was a draw, golden point and a draw. So it's a real tight one. Hull FC have every reason to win, haven't they? Because it's like them and Wakefield's at a shootout for that 6th spot. But Lee need to get back on the road, and so it's going to be a very, very tight game indeed. But I'm going for the Leopards to bounce back after last week.
And Saints Huddersfield. I'm Saints, everything points to them continuing this fantastic run of form, but I think Huddersfield will be awkward.
I agree. I think Saints. Both teams are coming into the contest with back-to-back wins. Like you said, Saints offer a very impressive victory away at Wakefield. I think we want to continue that vein of form, but Huddersfield have showed plenty of encouraging signs. So I think they're going to be a stubborn test, Huddersfield, but I do think Saints will have the quality at home to get the result.
I'm with you.
Rounding off the weekend, as we've mentioned, we don't know what version of Salford we're going to get. Wakefield will go into that game heavy favourites, obviously, but a good opportunity coming off the back of that defeat to St Helens from a Wakefield perspective to either just find some cohesion and confidence against John, or blood a few youngsters.
And they may well,
possibly both.
Yeah, I think they will blood some youngsters, and I think they will get that cohesion. And I mean, when you're predicting Salford games, you're really predicting how many they're going to lose by. And that's the sad state of it.
Damage limitation.
It is very much so.
For
So
Salford.
I just think they're going to get whacked, and I feel really sorry that they're going to get whacked once again. But that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, that is what's going to happen, and unfortunately,
bless him as a Salford fan.
Well, look, it's horrible, isn't it? I am a Salford fan, so it's horrible, but I think everyone that was quite uncomfortable viewing against Hull FC at the weekend. I think it will be again, and thoughts go out to Paul Rowley and the people that are
very much so.
Very much so. They are doing it tougher than perhaps we've seen. Jess, I feel like we've covered quite a lot of ground in that half an hour or so. I feel like we probably could do a lot more, but we will wrap it up. Pleasure to have you both in the studio with us. As we've said, we've got some belting games this weekend. We always do. Wigan versus Hull are obviously the headline act.
Yes.
I know the Championship's throwing up game after game, a week after week of excitement as well. Loads of rugby league right across the game now. That's just so significant as we get towards those playoffs. So we will see what this weekend brings. I'm sure there will be equally as much to talk about next week as well. But for the time being, thank you for tuning in. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Keep your eyes peeled as well, because we do have confirmation of our next live games coming very, very soon. But gents, thanks again. Great to have you with us. Great to have you with us. We'll see you next Wednesday for more from The Last Tackle.